And I thought, if I hadn't stopped on the way out, that's why I tell all actors or writers, don't give up. Keep talking. Eventually you might hit a nerve somewhere and they go, come on back. And if they didn't say, come on back, or bring it later and let's see what you've developed, I wouldn't be sitting here. So I have to give incredible credit to their insight and their patience, and they're willing to take a chance, which it doesn't exist much anymore, unfortunately. Originally, when I brought the script to them, they were fairly enthusiastic about it. The one thing they were not enthusiastic about was me playing the part, and I really can't blame them. At the time, Ryan O'Neal was a candidate, Burt Reynolds, Robert Redford, Jimmy Caan, and they all were at the top of their game. And so I could see it, but there was something inside of me that this opportunity is never going to come around. And I really wasn't used to money, and I had no idea what I would be missing. But the temptation started to come forward. First it was $25 grand, then $100,000. I never heard of $100,000. I had like $106 in the bank, and like I said, I had to sell my dog, and things were not looking very, very good. My $40 car had just blown up, so I was taking a bus to work. But still, it didn't matter. I wanted to stick with it. Then it went up to $150,000, $175,000, it went up to $250,000. Now my head was starting to spin. And it went up to $330,000. And probably, I heard it went up to $360,000. And I thought, all right, you've really managed poverty very well. You've got this down to a science. You really don't need much to live on. I had like sort of figured it out. So I was not in any way used to the good life. So I thought, you know what? If I know in the back of my mind, if I sell the script and it does very, very well, I'm going to jump off the building. If I'm not in it, there's no doubt about it. I'm going to leap in front of a train. I'm going to be very, very upset. So this is one of those things where you just roll the dice and you fly by the proverbial seat of your pants. Say, all right, I got to try it. I got to get to it. I may be totally wrong, and I'm going to be taking a lot of people down with me, but I just believe in it. We didn't have really the money to shoot a normal union film at that time in Philadelphia, so we would travel in a van. I would jump out of the van, and we were working with the handheld camera at the time with Garrett Brown, and it was somewhat experimental. And he'd film me running through shopping malls and up down the steps and flights, curved corridors along the river, until finally my legs basically gave out and I'm like writhing on the ground, and I want to rise up and say, John, I'm dying here. And he goes, no, use it. Use the pain. I said, for what? I mean, I'm in misery. He goes, well, no, it's giving your character, it's giving him some depth. I said, it's giving me bruises. It's giving me like agony. I can't sleep at night. But John would use, one thing about John, he would use the environment. If he saw, like the scene where we just jumped down and saw this ship along the dock, this docked along the pier. I said, just jump out, run as fast as you can along the ship, and I'm running and running. I said, you know what? My legs are buckling. I'm literally going to crash down here. Teeth are going to go, jaw, face. I'm just going to be ground down to this flat-faced image. Please. And I just barely made it, because John he would have me run and jump park benches and down streets, and people are throwing things at me. Like when I had the orange thrown at me, and these people had no idea who I was. I was just some strange alien invader in a well-worn, tattered, baggy, incredibly ugly sweatsuit running through their neighborhood, and they're like throwing things at me. And we kind of like made it work, but actually it was like I thought they were trying to hit me with the orange. There was a kind of a lot of injuries on the set. I remember I was doing running up and down the steps. Originally I was supposed to run up and down the steps with butt gears to show how strong Rocky had become. The first time I could barely get up the steps, and then I started picking up the dog, and halfway up the steps I said, this is a bad idea. The dog weighed about 135 pounds. I said, and there's no way I could run gracefully up the steps, more or less. I couldn't even stagger up the steps, so the dog was definitely cut out. But in the meantime, I had gotten a wicked case of shin splints, which is an old injury I had gotten from playing high school football. And then when I was hitting the meat, I thought, wow, this would be an interesting visual, hitting the meat. Well, I don't know if anyone's hit a bull lately. They're hard. They're real hard. So all my knuckles are flattened out. They just became, I guess, kind of like, well, I don't know what they're good for anymore. I guess, kind of like a table leg now. They're pretty flat, they're pretty even. They really don't function as a hand much anymore. But these are all somewhat of the memories of, and the broken finger that I was using with Adrian. I said, okay, I'll just like take all the injuries in the movie and somehow work it in. Also in the movie, there was, we couldn't afford many people, so I tried to get as much help from friends, from my brother who plays a street corner singer, and my father who's a bell ringer. As I said, my dog is in it. Even my wife, my first wife, was the set photographer, but I think she shot a total of maybe 100 pictures because the budget was really, really tight. And actually, it was probably the best set photographer I've had in a long time because all those pictures are great. Talia Shire was also a last-minute choice because we just couldn't find the right person, and then she came in, and it was, I think, the same night as Carl Weathers. I think it was. And she came in, and we just read, and I felt the earth move. I really felt a tremendous vitality and kinship. I mean, I loved her. I really, really loved her. I just loved the way she looked and the way her hair fell on this timid, fragile creature. I said, just incredible, and a perfect voice. So when we were going to do, Rocky meets her, and he just talks to her, and he sees a beauty in her that no one else sees because everyone has something to do. Rocky really has nothing to do, so he moves at a much slower pace, and he observes, and he sees things that other people don't see. So he's trying to bring her out because I guess he feels that she's probably the only one who's worse off than he is. So he's feeling kind of like a little protective towards her. And the sequence where we're supposed to go ice skating, originally that was written for 300 extras, and it was a big deal. Well, I show up on the set. They said, we have a slight change in plans. We have one extra. I said, interesting. And I said, well, I have an interesting thing to tell you too. I don't ice skate. I don't know why I wrote it, but I thought it'd be interesting. So here we are with an empty arena, and I don't really skate at all. So I decided I was going to run on ice, and she says she skates, but if you watch her ankles are falling in, and she's barely holding on, and Rocky's trying to explain his life, looking cool, and he looks like so foolish, but she doesn't care. And where they really come together at that moment when he goes, my father said I wasn't born with much of a brain. He goes, my mother, she says sort of the same thing. She says, you weren't born with much of a body, so you better start developing your brain. It's like, well, these two people are two halves that absolutely need to fit together. They are really on the same page.